Right, so as Women's Month comes to an end today, women in the legal profession still face barriers hampering their career development, including patriarchy and misogynistic behaviour conducted by big law firms and their male peers. But this morning we focus more on what it takes to be a female legal practitioner, and of course the strides made over the years. And is transformation a reality or just a pipe dream in the legal profession? Well, we have managed to pull together three unbelievable legal minds this morning, and to talk all matters legal, we've got with us Natasha Moni from Moni Attorneys Incorporated. We've also got Advocate Fezeka Magano, who is the Deputy Chairperson of the Black Lawyers Association. And we've got Feziwe Phungula, who's a Director at Mncedisi, Ndlovu and Sedumedi Attorneys. Wow, ladies, what a pleasure to have all three of you with us this morning. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you. Thank you, Leanne.
So 27 years into our democracy, and, you know, I suppose the best starting point is to ask, how has our country's constitution made it easy for the transformation of the legal profession to also include more female representation? And I mean, let me begin with you, Natasha. I know that I introduced you first, so let me begin with you.
Well, it has moved and then it hasn't. So we take two steps forward and one step back, and that is a particular problem. Across the gender industry, across the gender divide, we are looking at parity, and we are not getting there fast enough. In 1994, the Constitutional Court had 2 women. In 2021, the Constitutional Court has 4 women. And this is our apex court. Along the way, we have judges in the labour courts and in the high courts, and part-time commissioners who are female in the CCMA and other tribunals. However, we have not reached that parity, and we're not going to reach that parity anytime soon, because the hurdles to begin your law career are still there. And it starts at varsity. And what I have found in my reading up on today's topic is that it more is not what you know, but who you know, especially in the legal fraternity. It is a problem because the legal fraternity is so traditional and has its own culture and set of rules, which are very particular to this industry. And it is difficult to break the mold. For instance, a woman should still pour tea in meetings. I mean, this is rubbish. This is not what we are there for, not what we have studied. We also have this trailblazer phenomenon where women seem to have to work twice as hard to get where they're going. So you will find a phenomenal judge in the Constitutional Court who really has done twice as much as her male counterparts. So we are getting there. We are almost women in the judiciary are almost half to that of their male counterparts. We should be more, because we are more in terms of the industry. It's not getting there.
It's hard to hear these things. It really is. I mean, especially from an outsider as myself looking in. I mean, I would think that, you know, I look at the three of you and hold you in the highest regard. And I mean, I would shine your shoes and pour your tea, not for anything other than the fact of what you've managed to achieve and just how absolutely fantastically you've done. And this representation at this level is amazing. But to hear the challenges that you go through, it's almost surreal. But it's amazing how it doesn't just happen to you. It seems to happen in every single industry, and it's a common thread that goes through. Advocate, let me ask you this. How rife is misogynistic behaviour, sexual harassment, and, importantly, racism directed to females from behind these closed doors and during these court arguments as well?
Look, from my own observation and from having noted what is other women have gone through, I wouldn't say it is that much of an open. It's like the secret that's there. It's more subtle. It's not something that you would say openly there's this much racism, and that is why it's so much more difficult to deal with it, because it's more like, you would say, an undertone of some sort, where you can actually feel in an environment that you're not welcome. But you will see that they welcome you in speech, but the sense is that you're not really welcome. And it then trickles down to also how much you are considered for certain work streams. So as a black female, mostly you would get that kind of work that is seen to be not that lucrative. But when I look deeper into it, at times I wonder whether it actually is racism or it's just a matter of privilege.
Yeah.
Because you see in certain instances where the same white counterparts, when they feel equal to certain black counterparts, you would not see that sort of treatment. For me, I think much as one would say it is racism, it's just privilege. And in the context of our country, privilege is connected with the white race.
And it's,
I believe that where the economic imbalance is to be addressed properly, where the one would factor in that equality. I know that Section 217 speaks about government having to, when they procure services, they need to look at equitability. That, I think, is the one thing that is still lacking. There is no equitability, because equality and equitability are two different things. You need to take people coming from different backgrounds and find ways to get them to a point where they can stand, all of them, tall.
Yeah. I mean, you've brought up so many interesting issues there, and Feziwe, let me bring you into the conversation, because I think, this idea of the old boys club seems to be coming up, quite a bit. Maybe hasn't been said as much, but if we talk about that club and you talk about the who you know as opposed to what you know, and the privilege as well as the white skin that goes with this. I mean, my question would be the same to you, Feziwe, your journey through this. What have been some of the things that you have witnessed and these challenges? Are you hearing a lot of similarities between the two stories that you've heard?
Okay, thank you, Leanne. Yes, I do concur with my colleagues, what they've said. But the challenges that I've experienced is that as a woman, there's a double oppression. As a woman, we are caregivers by nature. So I have to take care of my family, I have to take care of my kids, I have to take care of my spouse. And then at the same time, I'm also a professional. So you must, at all times, you have more work, you have to put more work than males most of the time. And the question that you asked about the sexual harassment and racism in the legal fraternity, I think that question shouldn't be in that way, because the sexual harassment and racism applies in all sectors. It's not really limited to our profession. So I think it's a societal issue that needs to be addressed, and not strictly to the law or the legal fraternity.
Yeah. And this is something I'm glad you're raising, because it is important. I mean, what you are saying, and I said it previously, is that it seems that, some of the concerns that you are saying are being echoed through all industries. And, it's a conversation we keep on having over and over again. But the good news is that we're having it amongst women. There are 4 of us that are having a conversation that, 3 unbelievably powerful legal minds that are women here. And whenever I turn on my television these days and I'm watching big legal cases, I am seeing much more legal representation, and I'm blown away by the women that are out there and the work that they are doing. And this is a great example for the younger generations coming forward, whereas when I was younger, that was never seen. You hardly saw any of this happening. So I suppose we cannot deny that there have been massive strides that have been made. I know we've got a long way to go, but it is thanks to ladies like you that have come through the ranks and have done exceptionally well. So, I mean, if we can acknowledge, and I'll come back to you, Natasha, some of the strides that we've made, we can say we've done a good job.
We can, but we cannot be complacent.
No.
And we are not complacent until there is parity. We are not complacent until our male counterparts support us in the way that we need supporting. We have more than one job as women. Just in the way that we network, in the way that we do things, we network in circles. Men network up and down. And that it bodes well for a corporate structure, but doesn't bode well for in a family, for instance. So our minds are always on our family. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We're doing this to leave a legacy, to assist our children. Why are men doing it? Well, they have other reasons. So we need to ensure that we are doing things for the right reason. And at the moment, gender seems to be an issue that we step back on and maybe park for another year. We don't really fully address it, and that's why I think that we're so far behind. There are phenomenal women. I don't put myself into that category, not yet anyway. I've only been in law for about 20 years. I have another 20, 30 years to go. Where I hope to achieve, and I hope to get there. Let me give you a example of what I'm talking about. When I am in court and I become assertive, what I believe is assertive, like a man who can be robust and assertive, I am told that I'm being aggressive, and this is an issue. The inherent bias that is within all industries is worse for women. And what is more typical about women and about the gender issues is that it is 40% worse for woman-on-woman inherent bias and prejudice. Yeah. So it seems as if we have only learned to work with one another as we get older. This doesn't come naturally to a woman. I find in terms of my female circles now in my late 40s, I am able now to communicate with women up and down the age and gender gap. And that's important. What I also say to people that I mentor is that in as much as I mentor you, you need to mentor me. So empower me coming upwards. And women seem to forget that. Also, there are women close ranks too. You know, and so it's we're getting there, but it is a struggle.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's almost a territorial struggle as well. You know, you think to yourself, you know, I worked so hard to get here. I'm going to just close the ranks in here so I can stay here for, you know, and not let anybody in. And this is possibly a big problem and something that we've seen happening through and through. But Advocate, let me ask you this question, because I have heard these concerns being raised about how particularly the state is using mostly male legal practitioners. And this has raised a couple of alarm bells where they basically use the big law firms by procuring their services instead of female legal practitioners. What explanations do they give? Have you seen this happening? Advocate, sorry.
That is the question.
Yes, please, Advocate, if I can.
I think I'm just having some connectivity issues.
No problems.
Apologies, Leanne.
Sure.
Look, Leanne, this is an issue that's been there for the longest of times. I mean, we relating to the briefing patterns in the profession. We have engaged the ministers dating back to the time of your Minister Bridget Mabandla some years ago as BLA. We have engaged all the stakeholders in government, SOEs, and we've spoken so many times. Our issues are very well known. The issues of briefing patterns haven't changed, and it doesn't seem as if there is any will from the side of government to change the manner in which things are being done. That as it may, it's not just a matter of, because the way I see it, it is a matter of government believing, from my own assessment, that they are actually doing us a favor by involving us more and giving us some kind of work. But the government has a duty in terms of that Section 217 of, I don't know what's happening. I think I'm having challenges with my connection.
We're hearing you perfectly.
Change my source of connection there.
Advocate, we can hear you perfectly.
You can hear me?
Perfectly. If you carry on, we can hear you. We've heard every word you've said. We're silent in hanging on to your words.
Bouncing like that. Yes, there is that Section 217 of the Constitution that compels government to put on systems in place, your fairness, equitability, transparency, and competitiveness when they are procuring services, and that extends to the legal services. The greatest challenge that we've had, the biggest procurer of legal services in this country, I stand to be corrected, is government. Well, we know there's the private sector, which is a big procurer as well. But the biggest challenge is that as Black practitioners, particularly advocates, if you have to look at advocates, even attorneys, we know that pre-1994, there was not much of us being involved in a lot of complex legal matters, and there were very few Black people that were even legal practitioners. Come the new dispensation, we had an issue wherein we are still being compared with your white counterparts, if I should use that word, but I think it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
And I know many times when we raise the issue of race and we have to speak about whiteness and white people, some people would think that you have something personal against the race itself to a point of being called a racist, but that is not the case. As I've indicated earlier, the issue of privilege is directly tied to whiteness in this country. And until such time that government comes on board and becomes serious itself. Because if government still prefers your white counterparts, and the biggest issue and the biggest, what I've heard is the reason behind them preferring white lawyers over Black lawyers is that they say, it's an allegation. Well, I don't believe it's true because I've seen incompetence also with white people. It is stated that we as Black practitioners were not as competent as our white counterparts. Now, that is where the challenge is, because if you're taking somebody that has been in the field for years and years and you coming on board, you can't obviously expect that person to perform at the same level. But the biggest challenge is that over the years, government continues to prefer the white people. I'll give you an example. If you look at two pieces of legislation, you look at the Road Accident Fund Act, you look at the constitution of our country. Both these legislations were enacted in the same year. But whenever you're talking constitutional constitutional experts, you are directed to some white elderly male legal practitioners. When you're talking Road Accident Fund practitioners, experts in that field, you'll be referred to people like us. The only difference there is because with the Road Accident Fund Act, it was opened up and Black people were given opportunities in that space, which is not the same with your constitutional law related matters. There is no such a thing as incompetence because law is law. You will find in spaces where we've been empowered and been given that space. For instance, I'll use the same example with the Road Accident Fund because I think it's an easier example. You'll find a situation where a junior Black female advocate will appear competently against an SC, a white male senior counsel, competently. because they have been given that opportunity. And the greatest challenge is that whenever they seek to empower us as Black females in particular, you'll be thrown into that brief last minute. And when you make a mistake, then it proves a point. So in a nutshell, there is no commitment to change the manner in which things are.
All right.
And the biggest challenge that I'm having is the brain drain. I've been saying this. Yes, thank you.
That's a big thing too. Advocate, I'm going to have to, and to all of our guests, I'm going to have to pause this conversation. I'm going to give you an opportunity to do just some closing statements and to sort of leave us with a message. But we're going to have to do that if you all do have time at around about just after 8 o'clock. We need to get the news to our viewers. If you're okay to just stay on a little bit so we can do closing statements, and I'd hate to leave it hanging here if that's fine. So we've got to quickly take an ad break and hopefully get those closing statements from our guests after the news at 8 o'clock. Let's quickly take a break.